Welcome to T Comfy's latest attempt to make some content because I got lazy and didn't edit anything and now have nothing to upload this week. So we're going to do what every content creator does when they're completely out of ideas, and we're going to make a fucking podcast. So I don't really have a name for this podcast. I might call it like the ramble or something like that, or the monologue, or I don't know. It'll be in the title, whatever name tentatively I decide to come up with for this. And there's not necessarily going to be like a whole bunch of these, but it might be something I do from time to time just to kind of fill gaps if it does well enough or if people like it. And if nobody likes it, then I'll just stop doing it. And that's too easy. But I was thinking about something the other day, and I just kind of wanted to talk through it without like writing anything down, you know, and just kind of like go through and see how far I could just work through this and this idea that I had come up with and see where I could take it. And that idea is what would happen if we were to actually find other sentient life somewhere out there in the universe. Because the first thing people think is, oh, we're going to run into a species that has a spoken language and is like, you know, hominid in nature, I guess. I don't know. What is a hominid? I'll look it up later. I'll look it up when I edit this. I'll put it right over here. Well, by which I mean they look like a monkey, you know, they're bipedal. They look like us kind of deal. You know, think like Greedo from Star Wars or anything like that. And that is not necessarily the case. Another big assumption I think we make a lot of the time is that they're going to be carbon based, and we don't necessarily know for a fact that all life is carbon based. It is possible for life to be based on other things, like based on what? Like based on I made it up, you know, like no source, I made it up, whatever. And it gets really interesting because think about it. If you were to go meet some man-made horror beyond your comprehension, except it wasn't man-made, it was alien-made horror beyond your comprehension, what would you do? How would you interact with that? Like, what would you even be thinking as you're standing there before something that you've never had to process before? Something like completely outside the realms of sci-fi and human fantasy fiction, you know? And it's just like something completely indescribable, comprehending you in the face. I'm not even gonna say staring at you, because what if it doesn't have eyes? You know, what if it sees differently than how most life on Earth sees with eyes? And what if it's just like this thing, you know? I'm not even gonna try and describe it because that defeats the whole purpose of the experiment, or the thought exercise, I guess. And what would you do? What's the first thing you would do? Because I would think if you weren't just scared shitless, you would try to communicate with it. I mean, you might just try to kill it, honestly, like just go straight to violence. But how do we know what's going to kill these things and what won't? And we'll get to that later. But let's say that you decide not to go straight for violence, and you woke up and chose, okay, maybe be an actually, like, you know, normal person and try and talk to this damn thing. So you go up and you try to make conversation with it, and the pitch at which your voice like actually comes out, like the frequency of your voice, is the alien equivalent of the brown note, and the thing just excretes everywhere, right? And then of course it's pissed off at you because it didn't want to do that, and it just kills you, or tries to kill you in the way it would kill other things that were based similarly to itself. That doesn't sound all that appealing to me, honestly. Like, I'm not fully convinced. You could take this route with just about any other way of communication, like spoken language, sign language, pictographs, anything. You have no idea what's going to set these things off. You don't know how they communicate. You don't know if you might draw up a cognito hazard for them, to use SCP lingo, and you basically draw that funny image that's used as the Memetic Hazard in the one SCP article, and gets shared around those subreddits all the time, and you just show it to it and it just fucking dies. Like, and then what? How do you even know it's dead? What if when these things die, they just like dissipate into a gas and just turn the air around you into something that's unbreathable for humans? And that's the next thing. Like, most carbon-based life has a respiratory system that breathes in oxygen or uses oxygen to facilitate bodily functions in some capacity, whether it be lungs or whatever. I don't know that there's many living organisms, and I'm sure there are. So, like, don't go making a laundry list of all the different, like, phytoplankton or whatever the fuck that don't need oxygen in some capacity to function. I get it. There's some out there, but the sentient life, we'll go with sentient life. We'll just talk about sentient life. Maintains homeostasis primarily through oxygen and through consumption of sugars, so to speak. To make it very simple, obviously there's like a whole sorts of shit that goes into a diet, but like fundamentally you need to burn food for fuel and you have to have oxygen to not die. So let's say that these aliens that we can't even describe don't breathe oxygen, because why would they? They're aliens. And let's say that what they determine to be an atmosphere is not livable for humans, right? So you go down there and you discover sentient life that you can't communicate with, because we're going to assume we find them on a planet for this part of this. You go down to their planet, and assuming they don't just kill you on site, let's say you landed somewhere relatively secluded because you wanted to try and plan out your approach, maybe study them from afar for a bit and try to get some sense of what their culture or societal structure might be, should they have any, and they're not just like, you know, the equivalent of cavemen that just hunt by themselves and asexually reproduce so they don't need a partner or whatever. And you get down there and you go, okay, well, these things can live, but I can't breathe here and I'm stuck in the astronaut suit, so to speak, right? And how do we know like what their like actual livable, breathable air is? Because air isn't oxygen. Air is mostly nitrogen, actually. It's got like 20% oxygen in it and then a bunch of other fun, cool bullshit. But most of the air is nitrogen that you breathe in. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've not taken a science course in a while, like a couple of years now. But last time I checked, most of the breathable air on Earth is like 70-something% nitrogen and 20% oxygen, and then a little bit of legroom for all the other bullshit in the air, like microplastics or whatever's in the air now. It's gonna kill us. So imagine you walk up to them in this suit, right? And that's what that alien is going to think humans look like, because it can't, it perceives the suit before it even is aware there's somebody inside of it. So you basically walk up looking like a giant marshmallow man, and these things are thinking, oh, it's a bunch of marshmallow people. That's interesting. Or maybe they don't think anything at all. Maybe it's just a hive mind, and they're just like, we're going to assimilate this thing. And then turns out alien brains work different than human brains, and they just end up like cooking your brain like an egg, trying to assimilate you into a hive mind, and then they get curious as to why you're dead, or, you know, not doing what it wants. I guess it would be an it if it's a hive mind, because it wouldn't be a they, because there's only one, they being a group here, because there's only one. It would only be the one, right? I would think. That makes sense to me. But yeah, it's like, what would you even do? How would you even talk to an alien that you know nothing about? Let's say you try to use hand signals. You walk up and you put your hands up to either side of you. I'm doing it right now while my camera's not on. Obviously, nobody can see what I'm doing, but just imagine you got your hands up in the classic, I'm not holding a weapon. Humans understand this basically like at a cultural level at this point. It's pretty much subconscious at this point to understand that when somebody's hands are up, it means that they're presenting themselves as to not be a threat, because they are not wielding a weapon in a capacity that could actually injure somebody at the time. It's like a sign of peace in a way. But what if you do that to an alien, and these aliens, let's assume they're even like hominid. I'm going to use that word again, even though I don't know what it means. They look like monkey in nature, you know? Let's say, even if we have carbon-based, recognizable, sentient life that resembles us and breathes the same composition of air that we breathe, right? What if these specific little monkey men decide, or evolve, I guess, not decide, don't choose to evolve. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know how that works. Maybe the entire species over millennia chooses, but I don't think it's very much of an individual decision. So what happens when you raise your arms up like that and you get absolutely blown the fuck away by somebody who decided to raise their arms up faster than you, and lo and behold, they have two arms that shoot out from under their arms with guns, or whatever the alien equivalent of guns is in this culture, if they're still in the bow and arrow age or whatever, because these guys can like General Grievous themselves or some shit, you know? And so that hand signal to them signifies that you're actually threatening them or trying to intimidate them. And you would have no way of knowing that until it was too late, because you would go to do it and they would go, oh, he's got a glorbo or whatever, and they would just cap your ass. And that's it. No more aliens, you know? Then it would just be an all-out war between alien cultures because they are incapable of understanding each other. So then the real question, I guess, is like, how would you even successfully communicate with an alien, you know? What is something that, because we're going to go off of the assumption that we're still talking about monkey aliens, right? Like monkey people or whatever, like things that look like human enough. It's like, it just looks at it, it's like, okay, good enough. And we just try to teach them human earth culture or whatever earth culture would look like. It's a pretty diverse thing. I guess if you were to describe earth culture, I'm going to sidetrack here for a second. I guess earth culture fundamentally at its base is things like universal hand signals, houses, cars, methods of transportation, hobbies, expressions, emotions, things that every culture has and understands and doesn't really need to be taught by other cultures, or like, oh, that's questionable in this culture but not in this culture. Like, it's not anything nuanced like that. It's just overarching fundamental tenets of humanity, so to speak. And how would you try to express that to a similar in appearance but not quite race of aliens that can't necessarily communicate with you because you don't speak the same spoken language, and we're going to assume that you can't brown note each other by singing happy birthday or whatever the fuck? How would you communicate that? Because at that point, would a pictograph be useful? Would we just be banking on the first sentient race of aliens that we come across being similar enough to us that they attempt communication before trying to kill us? And because if that's not the case, then we could just be completely subsumed in a Death Star-like attack the moment that any alien race gets wind of our existence, and we're deemed to be like the cockroaches of the universe, so to speak. Like, they just keep killing us and we keep coming back or whatever, you know? Like, oh, I thought we sent an asteroid to kill those things. Like, no, that was dinosaurs. Like, oh, well, guess we gotta send another one or whatever, right? I don't even know if there's a way that you could actually pull that off. I'm not convinced 100% that there's a way you would be able to pull that off in any meaningful capacity. And if anybody could try and maybe come up with something in the comments or something, I'd be more than happy to read it and not respond, because I lurk even on my own channel. But I read it. I read it all. I read all of them. I read all the comments, even if I don't respond to most of them, because I lurk all the time everywhere I go on the internet. I just kind of lurk. But I guess it's kind of like a moot point, because this entire question was pretty much created on the tenet of it's impossible. So there's always going to be some Deus Ex Machina, like some, well, I have a laser-proof shield or whatever, you know, like what little kids do when they're having imaginary fights. Like, my dad could beat up your dad. Well, my dad has a your dad proof armor or whatever. So in that capacity, I guess, but is there a universal experience that all sentient life would have that would make it to where they could communicate at the very least through that fundamental tenet or set of tenets, rather than just staring each other in the face, not knowing what to do, because what if they stare at me for too long and I melt, or I get cancer because it turns out they see by blasting gamma radiation and waiting for it to come back like a bat, or they use it to like see through surfaces or whatever, right? So like, how would you communicate? Because I don't really think that you would have a reliable way to do that. And what would be what would be the first thing you say? I mean, would you try to, I assume you would, obviously you would try to establish peace first, would probably be the first thing. Because if you're not establishing peace, then that means we're going to war against alien technology, which can be anywhere from basically gun but bad to literally the Death Star and anything outside of that realm that we have no means of understanding. Like, you may be an alien out there whose weapon is basically what we would consider to be a water gun, because they're like all Wicked Witch of the West or whatever, and when you spray them with water. Is anyone even going to get that reference? Is anyone even going to get that fucking reference anymore? I sure hope so. I hope so, because I don't even know how I get that reference. Anyways, you spray it with them with water and they just die, you know? And then meanwhile, we just drink the shit. It'd be the equivalent of finding an alien that like chugged gasoline and then ate lit matches for sustenance, you know? Like, it would just be so foreign to us that we would have no way of understanding how that even worked outside of the fundamental, it consumes things to exist. And what if they don't have to consume things to exist? No, there's no way they win. There's no way there would be a self-sustaining sentient alien out there, because the entire universe is kind of built on this concept of like eventual heat death, to where everything eventually is like all energy is eventually dissipated into heat through friction or whatever, and then there's just no more energy left. But honestly, I don't think it's possible for there to be any kind of like alien life out there that would just be, oh, well, we don't believe in friction, you know, like a freshman engineering student alien race, or they just ignore friction and air resistance or whatever. I don't think such a thing could exist, because it would violate certain laws of physics or whatever. But then that begs the question though, like, how would they eat, like, or what we would consider to be eating? Would they like photosynthesize? Would they drink gasoline, like I was saying earlier? Or like what if like it's like kimchi from Chowder and it's just like a giant sentient shit cloud that just floats around and it's literally filled with like sulfur and shit, and it literally just kills you on contact? Somebody would try to fuck it. I'm sure somebody would try to have sex with a giant sentient fart cloud that could kill you the moment it touches you. I'm sure somebody out there would try it. That's vile. It's actually rank. I don't know who, but there's got to be one person out there that would do it. So what other kinds of aliens could there be then that aren't generally thought of as being like conventional? When you think aliens, most people either think Greedo from Star Wars, or Chewbacca, you know, walks on two legs, or like Eldritch Abomination, like bunch of spindly little legs, or like slug things, or what are those Cronenbergs, you know, like little Cronenbergs, or melds of animals that already exist in a way that looks unnatural but still recognizable. So then what would be, I don't really know that there would be anything that, there's got to be some type of sentient alien that we have not already thought of, or that we couldn't think of if we really tried, or at least in a meaningful way that we could understand, because there's no way we've thought of everything. I mean, I'm sure we would try to rationalize it in some way and compare it to something we know, but it would always have like this uncanny valley to it, or I guess it has the potential to have this uncanny valley to it rather, which would kind of just make it feel off, but you wouldn't understand why, because it looks familiar enough but not quite. Kind of like a Trevor Henderson piece, except like less human, with like a faces and shit. Because what if it doesn't have a face? What if it doesn't need a face? Because let's be honest, our faces are really for consume food and see and smell for survival at the basic fundamental level. It's for navigation and maintaining ourselves so we don't fucking die, and being able to smell things that are either good or bad for whatever biological purpose that serves, i.e. this smells like shit, I'm not going to eat it, versus this smells like cake, I should probably eat it, you know? So what if they're the sensory organs on an alien, assuming it has sensory organs in order to be sentient and be able to freely move and navigate, What if it doesn't need a face in the conventional sense? What if it has different senses than we have, but is still able to get around? For instance, they're able to like communicate what we would consider to be telepathically, I guess. They could just kind of like see brain waves and then they just translate it as it comes through the air towards them. It'd be like the equivalent of seeing words when you talked. And like, depending on like the noise they made, it determines like the frequency that they see, and then that frequency is a specific language. So like a certain hertz frequency would be the equivalent of English, and a different one would be like Japanese or Italian or whatever. That'd be pretty cool, actually. That'd be a cool concept. I don't know what it would look like in execution, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a sound people can hear, but it could just be any frequency outside of the human hearing range, or even within the human hearing range, that these things are capable of actually like seeing, you know, like they can physically see it as they observe the environment around them through whatever capacity they have to do that. That would be really cool. I don't know what it would take, because we have instruments that allow us to see sound waves. I mean, obviously we can't see them in real time. Like we can't see them as they're traveling, I don't think, but what if there was an alien that could in some way? And that would be really, really sick, actually. Because what if we found an alien that we thought was a robot, and it turns out it was actually like organic to their own definition of organic? I think that could be pretty cool, actually. I think that could be really cool. That'd be really neat. But what would that look like? How would we interact with that? And then they would like, imagine like a silicon based life form, basically robot but real. And maybe not robot but real, but robot but not human per se, but robot but sentient and also not built in factory. And then they see like their robots are carbon based and are basically made of organic material then. And then you have like basically robots that are like humans, but they're not sentient. They're just kind of like meat monsters that the silicon based, what we would call the robot people, made in order to do their mundane tasks. So say for instance, like how we have a microwave, this silicon based alien thing would have a similar thing that does the same thing, but it would basically look like a human stomach stuck to their wall or whatever, which that would be wild. And like they encased it in whatever building material they use, but then you open it up and it's just the flesh that hates, and it just heats their glorbo meal, and then they just eat it however silicon aliens would eat things, whatever capacity that would mean. And then what would they eat? Because they wouldn't eat food. Food, as the way we see it, a silicon-based entity wouldn't eat in the traditional sense in the way that we think about eating. Would they? I mean, maybe they would, but let's say they didn't. Let's say that it was similar to how we have robots, right? Like our robots, but sentient, and they procreate instead of be built in factory. So then what does that look like? How do they eat? Because they need electricity, right? Would they just basically eat batteries? Like, how would that work? Would they have to like, their lunch would be the equivalent of like sitting on a charging table and standing around waiting until they feel like they're full? Because there wouldn't be a visual indicator, would there? Because there's no visual indicator for people, you know, or for animals or any other carbon-based life that they're full. It's just kind of like, okay, I feel good now. There's no more room. Can you see there's no more room? No, you can feel it though. You can feel that there's no more room. And that's what these silicon aliens would probably experience as well, but they would do it in a manner more conducive to charging than anything else, the way that we see charging it. They'd probably look at us, and at first they'd probably be horrified that we were able to create silicon-based life, quote unquote, the way that they were able to, as scientists would probably see it, create carbon-based life, even if it literally is just a Cronenberg that, you know, keeps track of your gas total or whatever, you know, like whatever mundane things we use electronics for. Imagine a Game Boy Advance, but it's made out of meat. That would be awesome. That would be so cool. I want that now. I want the Cronenberg Boy Advance. The Cronen Boy Color. There we go. I don't know that I can say that. Whatever. You get what I'm saying. You get like the Nintendo 3DS, but it's all meat, and the stylus is like a bone or something. That'd be pretty neat, I think. I think that could be cool in a kind of grotesque sense, but that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be neat. I'd be down for it. I'd buy one. I'd be first in line. What would the cartridges for that look like? Would it just like be little brains that you just like connect into the little thing somewhere, and you have like a little pulsing brain outside of it, and then that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. And then you could play like Cronenberg Pokemon with your robot friends that aren't really robots. Yeah, that'd be kick-ass. Until somebody rage quits and they go to punch the TV and blood and bile shoot out of it, and it's like, oh man, now I gotta clean up this mess, and you're just sitting there in a horror, like what in the fuck? And like it wouldn't have a capacity to scream. It would be like that one what's that one horror thing from the 90s? Like, I have no mouth and I must scream. Would it all be like that? No, because they're not sentient. That's right. They're not sentient. They're just little Cronenbergs that do their designed task. They're manufactured in factories or whatever. And that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be really cool, actually. I want to see a concept fletched out of that. Like, fledged. I mean, not fletched. It's not an arrow. Fledged out with a G, a DG. I could see that being really cool, actually, in concept. Just people stumbling upon silicon-based aliens, and they think it's a robot society that's enslaved all the organic life, and then they realize it's the other way around, that they've managed to manufacture organic life to basically meet their silicon-based conveniences, you know? In a similar way, like their cars would run off of it, or equivalent. Their transportation, I should say, would run off of carbon-based life and all of that. And that'd be really cool too, because you know what you would be able to do then? When you needed to charge up your device, your Cronenberg, you would just feed it another broken Cronenberg, right? And that would technically work, assuming that a carbon-based, not electronic, but a carbon-based entertainment device. That sounds wrong. That sounds wrong when I say it out loud. Don't take it the wrong way. Like a carbon-based commodity that would be like not sentient, not really thinking, but just kind of performing a predetermined task without any chance of like gaining knowledge or evolving in any way, because it's literally just like a Cronenberg. And you would think it would decay after a while, but maybe the atmospheric conditions aren't conducive with decay on their world in a way that most electronics don't really decay on Earth. Or I guess electronics do decay over time. The battery capacitance like gets worse over time or whatever. So I guess they would decay over time, but it wouldn't be like, it wouldn't rot. Or maybe they would rot. Maybe that's when you know when to throw it out. When it starts rotting on the inside, you've got to replace the component. Instead of it's not holding a charge anymore, it would be, oh, my Super Nintendo's liver failed, and now I've got to get another one. You got to take it to like the parts shop, the electronics part shop, to get it fixed. And it's just like a meat shop, and you go in and just pick out like it's like the new egg of black market organ trading. Oh, now we're getting into organ trading. Oh, this is going to be an awesome segue. And you get into like organ trading store, and you go in, and it's like, oh, this is the Cronin Deluxe liver. It'll last you like X many years or whatever. And then it's like, oh, okay, cool. Can you replace it for me? Yeah, sure. And he just cuts into it and like cuts out the old liver and stitches in the new one, and then gives it back. And suddenly your Super Nintendo but meat bag works again. You just go get another brain cartridge to plug into it, like Super Mario Robot Edition or whatever. That'd be cool. That'd be so fucking cool. It would be unbelievable. I would love that. I would love to see that be a thing. I want somebody to make that a thing. You have anybody out there that is for some reason still listening to this after a half hour of me rambling on about bullshit. If anyone out there is still listening and thinks this is as cool of an idea as I think it is, take it and run with it. The only thing I ask is that you just credit me eventually, or hell, don't even do that. I'll just look at it and be like, I'll know. I'll be like, yeah, that's my Cronin DS idea pitch or whatever. I don't care. Go make your millions. I don't have the skill sets to go and make cohesive functional fiction in any capacity, written, visual, or whatever. So just take the idea and run with it, I guess, if you really want to. If my blessing even. I wish you all the best in that endeavor. So that'd be really sick. What other types of life could there be? Because we've already gone over like if we swapped carbon and silicon as far as their functionalities in human society and had a silicon-based society that used meat mechs. So what would be another good one that we could look at or talk about or think about? I say we, it's just me. I'm literally just rambling for probably the next 15 to 20 minutes if I had to guess. I don't want it to go quite an hour. I think I might be shooting for 50 minutes or so, because now it's got me thinking. Because I don't know, I've never really thought about any other forms of life outside of carbon and silicon based life. I'll be honest, I really haven't. So what if there was like a different, I can't even think of one. I guess if it like the fart cloud thing again, we can go back to the kimchi thing, but then like, how would that advance as a society? Because it's just a gas, and a gas would just expand to take up whatever space it's in, right? So could you have gas-based life? I don't imagine you could. I don't imagine gas-based life would work unless you were able to just keep it in a box, but then how would it ever advance? You know, how would it procreate? How would it do anything? I don't think gas-based life could really exist. Which begs the question, how does kimchi exist? Like the character from Chowder, not the dish. Obviously I know how the dish exists, it's food. I'm talking about the Chowder character. How does that fart cloud, the pet fart cloud work? I don't think that works. Which I get it, it's fucking Chowder. There's a literal rock person that says rada rada for 99% of all of his spoken dialogue in the entire show. I think he gets like 2 lines of English and then it just goes back to rada rada in one episode, if I'm remembering correctly. So I still don't think that would work though. Keep yawning, it's annoying. Guess I'm boring myself with this. I don't know. I honestly can't think of another type of life that isn't carbon or silicon. I don't know why. I'm literally drawing blanks on it. So let's go back to that idea then. I want to jump back in on that. How would they communicate with us? Would they try talking to like our cell phones? Because like, if we're being honest, a phone is literally just a supercomputer that you keep in your pocket. And it's not really much else beyond that if we're being honest. But like, what would they do if they saw like that we had the equivalent of walking around holding a liver or a kidney in our hands and then put it in our pockets at all hour of the day? Hours, plural, my bad. What would be their take on that? Would they be like just horrified by it? I'm sure there would be one that's like me that would just look at it and go, oh, fucking sick. And then they would try to figure out like more about that side of it, the way I was talking through that earlier. I think me and that silicon guy could be homies. We could be bros. If he was just like, dude, that's sick as. It's like having an eyeball in your pocket all the time. And I'm like, oh, you don't even know the half of it. And then he pulls out his phone, which is like just like a ball of ears with a brain tucked in the middle of it. And I'm just like, holy shit, that's sick as fuck. And you know, it just something like that. But again, how would you establish communication if both sides look at the other side and go, they've created horrors beyond our comprehension? I think that's like the 5th time I've said that in this fucking recording, but whatever. I'm going to keep saying it because I love the picture of Peter Griffin saying, oh, sweet, man-made horrors beyond my comprehension. I think that's really funny. But how would you be able to communicate in that sense? If you're already like on edge by seeing something that just makes you viscerally uncomfortable on a biological level, how would you go about actually trying to communicate and understand that the other group is doing exactly what you did? It just looks different and therefore looks bad because you're being Cronenberged and not them. Like, I would have to imagine that my desktop setup would horrify any silicon-based life form. Although, when I think about it now, maybe it wouldn't, because all of the silicon, like electronics and stuff, are encased in glass and plastic and like LED displays or LCD displays. So would they really have a full understanding of how any of it works? Because I doubt any of our like plugs and adapters and stuff would look familiar to them for the most part, because they would probably have something entirely different. Because what are the odds that they develop the USB-C cable, you know? Like, the odds are so monumentally low for how many different shapes and sizes you can make data transfer cables in. And would they even need data transfer cables? Like, they could communicate through other means. I mean, I guess a data transfer cable could be a euphemism in this sense, and that's how they make little baby robots, I guess. Not robots. I keep wanting to say robots. I don't have a better word for it. But they're not robots, because they're sentient. AIs, I guess. But AIs aren't necessarily silicon-based. AIs are more of a data-driven thing. I mean, you could program an AI, but I don't know if you could build an AI. You know what I mean? I don't think the AI is the physical aspect. It's another big yawn. So let's say we have like the Cronin DS, right? It looks just like a Nintendo DS, but then you watch a video of them taking it apart and it's just filled with meat. That would be way cooler, actually. A little less horrifying of a concept than carrying around a pulsating bag and calling it a phone, but like still way cooler for the subversive horror element there, or at least for like the shock value of it as like the big reveal. You watch a how-to video on how to fix your alien technology and you open it up and there's just a beating heart inside of it and you go, what the fuck? You make sure it's powered off first and it's like, what the fuck? That'd be actually sick as fuck. I keep coming back to this idea. I love this idea of just having like organs and shit as like the powering, the building blocks that run an entire intelligent society. That I may actually do something with this concept. It's a really cool idea. I think it's a really cool idea. Who am I kidding? I'm gonna forget about this the second I schedule it to be uploaded, and then I'm gonna get a comment like in a week from now, or a week from when I'm recording this. I'm recording this on May 10th. I'll get a comment like a week from now, and it'll just be like, T, what the fuck is wrong with you? Just talking about how cool it would be to find organs inside of my consumer electronics that I got from the robot people. Because it'd be so cool. And then like simultaneously have one of the silicon-based people open up an iPhone and be horrified when they see a capacitor in it or something. I don't know. It'd be really cool, I think, or like a CPU, because imagine, like, you know how people have their PCs and they got like the glass doors on the cases so they could see all their RGB lights and stuff, all their pride lights in their computers. And then like imagine if that whole thing was just organic material. So you have like a glass door that shows you like the meat core or whatever, like the i9, but they've just improved on the concept of the carbon-based heart, and instead of being water cooled, it's like blood warmed or whatever. I don't know how it would work. It would have to sweat. It would have to actually like sweat or something to expel heat. That'd be sick as fuck. That'd be so cool. I want to think more about how this would work, because at its core, like, I guess the CPU would be the brain at that point. So you'd have like a little brain sitting in there with a couple other organs, and then it just processes data and lets you fucking play Donkey Kong Country, or I guess in this case it'd be Bloons Tower Defense, because that's what's gonna be playing under all of this for y'all to watch while I go on incoherently for 40 to 50 minutes, which we're almost getting to that point. We're almost getting to that point, coming up on the close. So we started talking about how it's impossible to necessarily communicate with aliens, and then just moved on to talking about for probably 20 minutes now having robot people that used organs for their consumer devices. That's a hell of a trek. I guess I'll just kind of like circle back and wrap it all up though. But I think it would honestly do us more harm than good to find sentient life just because of the complete and utter gaps and barriers as far as communication, whether through spoken, written, or otherwise language. Like, any form of communication risks backfiring tremendously if you have not done enough indirect observation to discern how they communicate before actually making yourself known and making contact with said aliens. And I guess that would be the way to do it. I guess you would just have to kind of like lie in whatever alien shadows exist and pray you don't get got, and then tote it around as basically a yokai, so to speak, or like the Bigfoot of the alien world, and actually stand a chance of communicating with them before they've created some folklore legend about you and suddenly you're a show on their equivalent of the History Channel, where they're going and looking for you out in the woods and saying, oh, this is the human mating call, before making a fart noise with their equivalent of a mouth or whatever stupid shit people try to do, right? But yeah, I think that'd be the only way to actually stand a chance of potentially communicating with aliens that don't talk like us or don't communicate the way that we do, would be to observe them indirectly and hope to pick up enough information without being found out that we could eventually make contact in a meaningful manner without having any sort of risk to ourselves or to the aliens that we're trying to come into contact with. Although, let's hope that they're also not super naive and welcoming and are like, oh, please make yourself at home, because we're parasites. Let's be honest. The second some billionaire fuck got wind of it, they would just go and farm up these aliens for money, and it would just be a horrible, horrible thing. So maybe it's probably for the best. I think it's probably best that we don't ever find aliens anywhere. It's probably best that we just continue on doing whatever humans do, going out and exploring and finding new abandoned playgrounds that life may or may not have existed on previously, and just like working our way into infesting our entire solar system and eventually like the galaxy and the universe at large, if we could survive over the millennia that would take to do. And that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be pretty cool. But finding aliens is probably a really bad thing. It's probably the last thing you ever want, is to come into contact with an alien, because more likely than not, you're going to end up dead one way or another, whether it's by, what's the word I'm looking for? Negligence on the part of the aliens because they just didn't know any better, or ill intent because they just don't like aliens, or turns out we're cockroaches and they just want to kill us. We're considered vermin to them. Or even like they just don't know how to talk to us and deem us a threat because of how we behave, because our behavior is threatening to them in their culture or whatever. See the hand gestures thing from earlier. And beyond that, I don't really have anything else to add to this. If you liked this, let me know, and I'll make more of these as I have like shower thoughts throughout the day or whatever. I'll write them down and I'll actually sit down and really flesh it out. I think flesh is what I'm gonna say. I said fledge. I don't think fledge is a word either. If it is a word, I'll put it here. But yeah, if you like this, let me know. If you didn't, also let me know, so I'll stop doing it. Because if you don't like it, then there's no reason for me to keep doing it if nobody wants to see it. But yeah, that's my take on how finding aliens is bad, but making fiction about robot aliens that use the Cronenberg advance are pretty cool, and I want to see that be drafted into an actual concept and used by somebody, even if it's not me. Take care. This has been the I don't know the name of this and I pulled it out of my ass podcast, and I'll see you if I make another one of these.